More than half of Americans earning over $100,000 a year save nothing for retirement. Zero. And only about 5% of Americans have actually crossed the $1 million mark in their retirement accounts, even though nearly 24 million Americans have a net worth that high on paper. The gap between those two numbers is exactly what this video is about. There is a reason that gap exists, and it has nothing to do with intelligence or financial literacy. It has to do with something much more specific, a pattern that shows up consistently in the data on who actually builds retirement wealth and who doesn't. That pattern will come back around toward the end of this video, and once it lands, a lot of other financial decisions start to make more sense. There is also a set of characteristics shared by people who do reach the $1 million mark in retirement savings, and the list is not what most people expect. One of those characteristics, in particular, tends to genuinely surprise people the first time they see it. We'll get there. But first, the numbers themselves, because the picture only makes sense once the full data is on the table. There are two very different ways to measure millionaire status in America, and combining them produces a distorted picture of where most people actually stand. The first measure is total net worth, everything owned, including a home, minus everything owed. The second is money held specifically in tax-advantaged retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs. Both are legitimate, but they produce dramatically different results. On the net worth measure, the United States leads the world. According to UBS's 2025 Global Wealth Report, there are approximately 23.8 million millionaires in the U.S. as of 2024, nearly 40% of all millionaires globally, more than all of Western Europe and China combined. In 2024 alone, the country added roughly 379,000 new millionaires, the equivalent of more than 1,000 people crossing the $1 million threshold every single day. A strong stock market and a stable dollar drove much of that growth. That is a genuinely remarkable number. But placed in context, it tells a more complicated story. The U.S. population is approximately 340 million. 23.8 million millionaires represents about 7% of Americans, roughly 1 in 14. The other 13 out of 14 have a net worth below $1 million. And that 7% figure includes home equity, which for most American households is the single largest asset. Strip out the house, and the number of people with $1 million in liquid, investable wealth drops considerably. When the measurement shifts to retirement accounts specifically, the accounts most people are actually relying on to fund their later years, the picture changes substantially. Based on the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, only about 4.7% of Americans have $1 million or more saved in retirement accounts. Fewer than 1 in 20. The figure for $2 million falls to 1.8%. For $3 million, it drops to 0.8%. The full distribution is worth understanding, because it shows where the majority of Americans actually sit, and because the numbers at the bottom of that distribution are more sobering than most financial content acknowledges. More than half of all Americans, roughly 58%, have less than $10,000 saved in retirement accounts. Another 20% have between $10,000 and just under $100,000. Combined, that is nearly 80% of the country that has not yet saved its first $100,000 for retirement. A further 14% sit between $100,000 and $500,000. Only around 4 to 5% have crossed into seven figures. These numbers are not presented to create discouragement. They are presented because understanding the real starting point for the country as a whole and for any individual within it is the only honest basis for making better decisions. Comparing against a distorted average is not useful. Understanding where the median actually sits is. For households led by someone between 55 and 64, the median net worth is approximately $365,000, including the home. For households between 65 and 74, the figure rises to just under $410,000. For those 75 and older, it falls back to around $335,000. Half of households in each group have more than these figures. Half have less. For most American retirees, a significant portion of whatever wealth exists is locked in home equity, not in accounts available to spend. Now to the characteristics of people who do reach the million-dollar mark in retirement savings, and to the one characteristic that tends to surprise people most, which is still coming. The first characteristic is home ownership. The average homeowner in the U.S. has a net worth of over $1 million. The average renter has a net worth of under $100,000. That is a tenfold difference. The gap is partly self-reinforcing. People in stronger financial positions are more likely to buy. But home ownership itself builds wealth over time through equity accumulation in ways that renting does not. Among millionaires in the U.S., 95% own their home, with an average home value approaching $1 million, according to Federal Reserve data cited by Empower. The second characteristic is education. The average college graduate has a net worth roughly 5 times higher than someone without a degree. That premium compounds over a career of higher earnings, and it shows up clearly in retirement account balances over time. The third characteristic is income, and this is where the data produces the finding that was flagged at the beginning of this video, the one that tends to genuinely stop people. The top 10% of income earners in the U.S. have saved an average of around $770,000 in retirement accounts, and their average net worth approaches $5 million. That part is expected. What is not expected is this. More than half of Americans earning over $100,000 a year save nothing for retirement. Zero. The income is there. The savings are not. Which means the gap between a strong income and a secure retirement is not primarily a problem of earnings. It is a problem of where the earnings go. That finding points directly to the principle that runs through virtually every serious study of wealth accumulation. Spend less than you earn and invest the difference. 2 rules. Not a complex system. But the second rule, invest the difference, is where the breakdown consistently happens. Saving money in a low-yield account while inflation runs at 2 to 3% annually is not saving in any meaningful sense. The money has to be working in assets that grow faster than the cost of living erodes them. For most people, that means consistent participation in equity markets through index funds or diversified retirement accounts, sustained over time, regardless of short-term volatility. The evidence is clear that staying in the market through downturns produces far better outcomes than attempting to time exits and entries around them. Before moving into the practical framework, if this kind of direct look at the real numbers is useful, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. There is a great deal more content coming on retirement planning, savings strategy, and financial security for this stage of life. Subscribing takes about 5 seconds and makes a real difference in how widely this reaches people who need it. For those looking to close the gap between where they are and where they want to be, one framework financial planners return to consistently is the 50-30-20 budget. 50% of take-home pay directed toward needs, housing, utilities, groceries, transport, 30% toward wants, 20% toward savings and investment. It is not a comfortable budget. It requires real decisions about what is necessary and what is optional, but it represents one of the clearest and most direct paths from wherever someone currently stands toward a genuinely different financial position over 10 or 15 years. For people over 50, the tax code offers additional help in the form of catch-up contributions. In 2025, those over 50 can contribute up to $31,000 annually to a 401k and up to $8,000 to an IRA. For those aged 60 to 63 specifically, an even larger catch-up limit applies, bringing total possible 401k contributions to $34,750. These are not small numbers. Used consistently over the years between 50 and retirement, They can close gaps that feel, from the outside, unclosable. Now, the pattern that was flagged at the start. The reason the gap between earning a high income and building retirement wealth exists at scale across millions of Americans is not mysterious once the data is laid out. It is lifestyle inflation. As income rises, spending tends to rise with it, often faster. The raise goes to a larger house, a newer car, a higher baseline of daily spending that quietly becomes the new normal. And the savings rate stays flat or falls, even as the income that could be driving it grows. The people who actually reach the million-dollar mark in retirement accounts are not, for the most part, the highest earners in the room. According to the National Study of Millionaires, roughly 80% of U.S. millionaires are self-made. They did not inherit wealth. They built it through decades of choices made consistently and quietly. Living below what their income would allow. Investing deliberately. Staying in the market through downturns rather than reacting to them. The number is reachable for more people than the headlines suggest. But it requires starting from an honest picture of where things actually stand, not from the distorted version produced by averages skewed by outliers or by net worth figures inflated by home equity. The retirement account balance is the number that matters most, and for most Americans, that number has significant room to grow. The question is simply whether the habits that produce growth are in place, and if they are not, when the decision to change that gets made. Every year that passes with the right habits in place is a year that compounds. Every year that passes without them is a year that doesn't come back.